So here we are. This is the third and final part of this three-part series on the good school versus bad school debate on the Education Collective podcast. Okay. We finally made it to the third part, in which this is so exciting because I have so many amazing, just, you know, topics that I want to talk about. So let's get into it. Okay, so you know that we talked about just the history behind the good school versus bad school debate as it relates to school reform. Last week we talked about funding, and so I am so excited because this week we're actually going to be talking about the community, right? And I think that like all three of these things can come together to unify and just create a better understanding of what school reform can look like or should look like, right? And so let's just get into it. How can we bring together people and communities who care about schools with the teachers, with schools, school leaders, with the district? How can we bring them together and talk about what's happening in neighborhoods around the schools, right? Because I just remember, as an educator, you're sitting in the classroom and you're going to the teacher's lounge, and the reality is majority of the conversations that we have, we're mainly talking about some of the issues that we're facing in the classroom that has a direct community effect, right? And so we're talking about, well, wow, like these kids are in the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, right? And we really can't believe how behind these kids are. Like, these are some of the conversations. But then the conversation shifts to, what can we do to help each and every last one of our kids go to the next level? But then we realize that we're only one person. Like, you would think that in classrooms there would at least be two teachers, right? Wrong. Like, it needs to at least be two, sometimes even three. The class that I had last year needed to be about 4 or 5. I'm just saying, because you have to consider each child and what they have going on, their learning processes. They may have intervention services, so like you have to consider all of those things, right? And so when the education sector encourages community involvement as a strategy to build civic participation and power in low income communities, I feel like that is where the power lies, right? When we do that, that is where the power lies. I just cannot seem to grasp or understand how we got so far from connecting and building partnerships together. You know, the saying of it takes a village. I don't understand how we got from it takes a village approach to, in schools, we're just going to be secretive about everything, and then the community is not asking questions. Or we have the community asking questions and the school is not giving the right answer. So I don't know how we got there. But what I do know is that something needs to change in the name of school reform. um, I really cannot believe that we are where we are now, where we have a world where there is little to no connection between parents and schools. And let me just break that down, because I know like a lot of parents may say, no, I feel like I'm connected. Here's the thing. Parents build those trusting relationships with the teachers, right? Some parents don't even know the principal. Some parents don't even know the school superintendent of the district. And it only proves that building those relationships through a strong rapport, they matter, right? The issue with that is, and see, I'm not going off that hill and saying you should not build relationships with your child's teachers. No, I am not getting hurt off that hill. What I'm saying is that when you solely do that and you solely rely on the teacher, that is where things get misconstrued, right? Because the teacher can only do so much. I mean, we're contracted workers. I mean, let's just keep it real. We don't have the power. Like, I mean, teachers who try to go against the grain and do what they do, they either get blackballed or they end up leaving because they can't take the pressure. So I think that, you have a lot of parents who are like, well, I really trust my child's teacher. But you have to start building those relationships outside of the teacher as well, because a lot of the things that I've had parents call and asking me about, I'm like, I don't have that. I'm not the decision maker on that. I can, go to admin and I can say, hey, this parent is really pushing for this, but it's not my decision. So this is why you must like build those important relationships outside of the teacher as well. I understand the importance of building a relationship with the teacher because that is who is with your child, majority of the school day. But in order for you to truly advocate, you must build those other relationships, because here's what happens. So let's just say if you go up to the school and you're like, oh, I really want to fight for my kid to have this, but I really want to go and speak with administration. I want to go talk to the principal. You go talk to the principal, and the principal doesn't have a relationship with you. Some principals don't care to connect with parents or the community. They're just a face of the school. And I did not realize that that was a thing until one of the schools I worked in. And I'm not going to tell you which one. Well, maybe one day, but not today. um, and so guess what the principal does? They go to me, the teacher, and they're like, hey, so and so asked me to do this, but you need to go ahead and tell the parent that's not possible. What? What? It's like, I don't know. I'm not privy to the conversation that y'all had. So that's not fair. Like, you just put me as a teacher in a compromising position because I've built a solid relationship with this parent. The parent did not come to me, the parent came to you, but you want me to delay the bad news. And then you're not even going to give me an explanation about it. So how am I supposed to explain to the parent when they have questions? Oh, okay. Okay, I got it. So I just want y'all to think about that, and just if you're a parent, if you're a part of the community that, helps connect, maybe you have like a cousin or something, in a school, y'all need to know this. Like, it's very important to connect with the teachers, but it's also very important to really know the principals, to know the counselor, to know the behavior specialist. It's important for you to know. And here's the thing, these people are not going to try to go out and make you have a relationship with them. They don't care. Well, I'm not going to say they don't care. Some of them don't care for real. Like I said, some people are really just a face of the school. So that means the brand, right? And maybe one day I will feel free enough to tell the story about how I encountered one of those principals. So, getting back on track, I think that the change that needs to happen with connecting, back the community with schools cannot just be done in the four walls of a classroom, right? And I think that that is what a lot of educators are realizing. So we get in there and we're like really pumped up, and we've listened to Rita Pearson's everyone needs a champion, speech, and we're just like really pumped, right? And we're like, we're gonna change the world. And then when we get in the classroom, we're like, like, yeah, y'all didn't say we weren't gonna get, any help, any resources. Like, how are we supposed to change the world if you're not even giving me any tools or anything to help do that, right? And so a lot of educators, they realize that. And so they say, okay, what can I do outside of the four walls, right? Because I think that the politics play a really huge factor in the reason why some teachers don't advocate as much as they want to, because the politics says that if you ruffle the feathers a little too much, then you're gonna be on the chopping block. I'm just saying, like, because I mean, it low key almost happened to me, but I was a little bit more smarter. The commercial where I think it's a Geico commercial where the person is dangling the dollar, with a fishing, rod, and I think the Geico like lizard thing or whatever is trying to catch it. I don't know. Like that's what brings into my mind, and it's like every time you think you got it, boom, they're pushing the fishing pole back. Like that's how it is. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the change is hard to make in those four walls. Like you can do what you can, and you know that you have your vision, you have your purpose, but the reality is you are very limited as to what you can do in those four walls. We've got to stop thinking that it is the sole responsibility of the teacher to connect the community with what's going on in the schools. Because when we rely on that, and when teachers start telling the truth, that's when, all of the, well, you shouldn't tell the parents this. Why? It's public knowledge. Like, what are we doing here? Like, that's what I want to know. What are we doing? Right? And if district and school leaders don't know or have never been in the community that it serves, that's a red flag. How in the world are you going to be able to empathize with a community that's underserved if you've never even been in it? I'm not saying you have to be a part of it. See, I'm not saying that. I'm of the Joe Clarks of the world, okay? But I understand that everybody's not, they're not that radical, right? But if you don't visit to understand, if you don't connect with the community in that way, that's a true red flag. How are you going to speak to the disparities? How are you going to speak to, the limited or no, resources? How are you going to speak to that? Because the data on the paper says it? Is that what we're doing now? We're not using the human element anymore. Like, I think that by far is problem number one. How can schools, leaders, teachers, and districts connect with students if they've never gotten out of the four walls? And I mean that metaphorically and physically. Some of us, it's a mindset. If we have not gotten out of the four walls in our mind, then what are we doing in front of kids? What are we doing? At this point, going back to my point from last week's episode, are we babysitting? I really want to know. It's easy to speak about the demographics, right? What we see on paper. I can go right now and I can research the demographics of my community right now. It's easy for anybody to do that. It's public knowledge. But to truly understand the problem and to develop a solution, it truly takes the human element of being able to empathize with the communities that you serve, i.e., go and see the communities that you serve, okay? It's a reason why when I was in Clayton County in Georgia, they take you before you start the school year, they take you on this like journey, and all of the teachers, they get on a bus and they ride through the communities that we're going to be serving. You want to know why they do that? Because they want you to understand where your kids are coming from. Now, I like the fact that Clayton did that, but you got to be a little bit deeper. Like, you got to take that mindset all throughout the school year. We can't just do it during pre-planning and think that that's just going to help serve us the rest of the year. Some people know the communities that our kids are coming from. Do they care? No. Some people don't. They really don't. And I think that here's the thing. I think that the problem is multifaceted, right? On why the community and the schools are like this instead of this. I think that parents, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? The community doesn't know what they don't know. Some communities, they don't want to know. Some want to know, they just don't know the right questions to ask. But then we have the school. The schools should be transparent about everything that's happening in the schools, but why aren't they? There are a lot of things that happen in schools where I'm like, are we gonna tell the parents? like, are we? There's a story I told on TikTok, a true story about how I had a student who brought bullets to school, right? And if you want to know the entire story, I'll probably tell it again here on the podcast, but you can quickly go to my TikTok, the Pivot Strategist. And with the kid doing that, no one alerted the parents. So, of course, the kids went home and they were like telling what happened, and the parents are calling me. And I was thinking that communication was sent home, but it wasn't. So, the communication with schools and even with teachers are slim to none. Because there are a lot of things that happen in the front office that unless you're just buddy buddy with the principal and admin and everybody in the front, you're not going to know. I'm telling you, last school year, I didn't know half of what was going on. I mean, my room is in the back of the school. So if you didn't come down to my room or you didn't well, I never checked I never checked emails. But if you didn't come down to my room all the way in the dungeon, then I didn't know. Okay. I had no idea. And so I think that there has to be transparency with schools, right? You have to build that with the community. You have to let the community know that we are here to serve you as well as your children. But that just seems to be far from what schools are doing nowadays. Like they're hiding majority of the information it's not top secret. Like why are we not telling parents this like information? Like why? It doesn't make sense. I feel like parents in the community should know the school's overall data, teacher demographics, the certifications that teachers have, and specializations, as well as learning processes such as curriculum, special education, information, school-wide data, class and individual student academic goals. Like if the community doesn't know those things, then why are these things a secret? But see, schools do it under the name of, well, we held a what do we call those meetings? Well, we held a PTA or we held a parent what do we call it? It's on the tip of my tongue. We hold parent we hold like these parent meetings and only 2 parents show up. Maybe only 2 parents knew of what you guys were going to be talking about. If you don't make it a priority to explain the importance to the community and parents, then like what are you expecting? Of course you're going to have low enrollment. Like hello, like like make that make sense. Everything that happens in schools should not be a secret. Like it really shouldn't. We're holding their kids for 8+ hours of the day and we got the nerve to hold secrets. Like I get the idea of you have laws and policies where you can't share like kids personal information. I understand that, but we're talking about things that parents should know, right? So story time. A school year, I'm not gonna say which one because again I will eventually get to, full, on, well, this is where I worked, y'all, and this is what I did. So the end of the school year comes, right? And it's time for, in the state of Georgia, the Georgia milestone state testing, right? Now it's time for that. Now, me, because I'm also a parent, right? And because I've done my research and I found out a lot of information about this test. Well, the test is not even designed by people who are working in schools, right? It's a company that designs this test. And the state of Georgia has bought into this test as a success measure, right? So when we had the No Child Left Behind, these are one of these success like measures that was used to determine on if a school was doing what they needed to do, if the teacher was doing what they need to do. Hence the reason why teacher evaluations that they get done throughout the year a part of that at the end of the school year for third, fourth, and fifth grade, and this is for elementary. I don't know about middle and high. I'm gonna bring somebody on from middle and high to talk about that, but that's a part of your evaluation, how well your kids do or how poorly they do, right? So it's a test that's not designed for us. It's not a test that was designed by teachers who clearly know what each of these, students should know, right? They're the ones that are teaching, right? And so, anyway, after doing my research on the state of Georgia Department of Education's website, it clearly states that a parent has a right to refuse that test for their child, right? And it's like this wide letter that you use to, go and give the school and say, hey, this is my kid's refusal, like, and it cannot be held against them, as far as it can't be a point of retention. So let's just say if your kid had A's and B's, or even if your kid has C's, they can't say, well, because your parent refused a test for you, we're going to hold you back, right? They can't say that. And interestingly enough, it's mighty interesting how schools will try to argue with parents about their parent right. However, when the pandemic started, oh, parents didn't even need to refuse the test. The school was doing it for them. They're like, oh, we'll do the letters. We'll do all of that. You want to know why? Because the state mandated testing, the Georgia milestones, this is for in the state of Georgia, that is a part of the equation where you get the school grade score, right? So if you're looking up schools and you're like, oh, this is an A+ school, or oh, this is a school that has a grade of a C, well, this is a part of the calculation. It's not all of it, but it's a part of it, right? And so how is it that after the pandemic, oh, you don't want anybody to take this test, right? You didn't want any kid to take it. Want to know why? Because again, even though the state of Georgia gave flexibility with the teacher evaluation as well as school score, they still didn't want that. Because the thing is, you can't erase data. So of course you're not going to want that data. Now, fast forward to this situation, right? And so I had a few parents that came to me and they're like, hey, I really feel a type of way about this test coming up. My child is having anxiety, like, and now these are kids I taught. So I knew like that this was the truth. And I said, well, hey, I said, you know what? This is not Miss Bridges talking to you. This is Olivia talking to you, right? And I said, well, like you do, like it is your parents, your parental right. Let me just say it that way. It is your parental right to refuse the test for your child if you want to. And I sent them the resources where they can read this for themselves. They were able to, draft up what they needed to draft up as far as a formal letter to let the school know that, hey, I don't want my child to take the test, right? So I'm refusing the test for my child. So, and I did tell them, I said, well, some schools are like, okay, we're not going to battle you about this, but you got some schools who will literally threaten to retain your child, all because you're refusing this test for your child. And your child could have straight A's. And they're like, oh no, we got something for you. We're just going to tell you that we're going to retain your child, or we're going to make your child do summer school. And you can refuse all of that too. You don't have to, like, I don't know why schools are acting like you don't have control over your child's education, because you do. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so, anyway, the parents, they were like, okay, wow, like, thank you for letting us know this, because we never knew. And I was like, well, it's public knowledge. Like, it's not anything that's, here's the thing. The saying, if you ever want to hide anything, put it in a book, put it somewhere where people can read it, because people are not going to naturally go out and try to research this information, right? And so, and that's like an innate ability, right? And so, anyway, they went to the schools, and the school is like, okay, like, how do you know this information? And I told them, I said, look, y'all can tell them. I said, I don't care. Like, because I'm in the business of making sure I am here for my kids as well as my parents. I'm not here to be a part of a school clique. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to do any of that. I'm really here for the kids. Okay? Like, and I'm all about showing and proving. Like, you can come in room 118, or you can come into any one of my rooms and you will see this is where the learning is going down. I don't care about all this, let's do this outside of school and all that. Like, no, I don't care about that. Shout out to my, forever, relationships that I have built. Brooks, Tarver, Parker, like Mills, like I'm telling you, Smith, like, so it's, I'm naming last names because, of course, because of their identity. But these are relationships that I have built where they know that this, you want some reading, you want you want the reading lessons to go on, you better get in that room right there, because I'm not playing. We're gonna learn, and we're gonna learn today, tomorrow, forever. Like, we're gonna learn, right? And so anyway, I took a day off of school, which that was very rare until my last like school year at my previous school, because I was like, I'm just gonna take off every other week. But anyway, I took a day off. While I was gone, the administration goes around asking other teachers, am I trying to basically start this divide between the parents and the schools because I'm telling the parents of their parental rights? I'm like, are they acting like I'm starting a political war or something? Like, this is not information that should be hidden. Like, this is information that parents should know. And then I said, because I reminded the parents, I was like, think about last year. Your kid didn't have to take the test. And think about that letter that the school sent home, and the only thing you had to do was sign it. That's the same exact letter that you're going to turn in this year. So why was it acceptable to do it last year instead of this year? Oh, because y'all didn't want to put in the work last year to even, gather the test. You didn't want that data. Even though the state of Georgia was giving a flexibility like measure there, you still didn't want the data, because you cannot erase data. You cannot make up data. Ask the teachers in the Atlanta cheating scandal. They'll tell you. Can't make up, like, you just cannot make stuff up. You can't let it go away. You can't make it up. That's why you didn't want the kids to take it. And so when I got back to work the next day, they're telling me like, we were getting asked all of these weird questions, on my team, and I'm like, but you could just come and ask me. Like, you could just ask the person like who told the parents this information that's not hidden. So then they try to tell the parents, well, no, that's not true information. So you mean to tell me the information that's on the Georgia Department of Education's website is not real? Is that what we're saying? And so I said, no. I said, what y'all need to do is make sure that you give the school this information where you researched it from, because maybe you have to educate the school on it. The school knew, they just didn't want to do it, right? They just didn't want to do it, because the thing is, when you refuse these tests, you still have to have something for these kids to do, right? But the logistics of school says that, dang, I actually have to have somebody to watch these other kids while the other kids are in here taking the test. So I said all that to say that there is a lot of information that it's like top secret from the CIA or something, when I'm like, why? Like, why? Because this is information that the community should know. What would happen if all kids in the state of Georgia did just refuse to test? What would happen? They would have to come up with something else to measure student outcomes. I'm just saying, I'm a radical. Let's just all get it together and let's do it. My kids don't take the test. I'm just saying, and I'm never going to, here's the thing. I'm never going to persuade anyone to go against what their value and their belief is, right? If you believe that this is a test that you want your kid to take, by all means, go and do it. But here's the thing. I have sat in classrooms and I have proctored the exam where kids are literally breaking down, like breaking out in hives, crying, screaming, acting up, because they're like, I can't do it, and me as an educator, while taking the test, I just have to look like this. If y'all are watching the visuals, then you'll see. When they're asking a question, this is my face. Because you're not going to accuse me of cheating, because I'm not going to jail for 30 to 40 years. I don't look good in orange. I'm just saying, and So that I said all that and I told that story to say that there are schools, there are districts, there are school leaders that are out here who it's not necessarily that they're going to take all this information and shield it, but when you start to ask the important questions, they're not going to give you the truth. And that is a major problem. That is a major problem. Why are we not being truthful? Why are we not being transparent? I'm not understanding. Even a situation where the kid had brought the weapon, like what are we doing here? And we're seeing it play out on the news every single day. And these are the harmful practices that are in schools where I consult parents now, and this is just something I just do just off the strength of this is just something that I do, right? So this is something that I do right now. I consult parents and let them know that these are their rights. Like, did you have a right to do this? You may want to ask these questions, like, make sure that you partner with the schools. I'm never going to encourage parents to, well, no, you don't have to listen to anything the school says. No, that I don't encourage parents to do that. I encourage them to build partnerships with the people at the school. Now, if the school is doing something wrong, oh no, I'm going to tell them, like, no, this is wrong. This is not law. Like, this is not what you're supposed to do, right? And so if we encourage and equip all communities with what they need, then we start to see the shift in a big way, right? Hence school reform. So we first got to start focusing on communities that are underserved. So I do understand that we say, like, okay, well, like all communities, well, the communities who already have what they need, now we've got to shed some light on communities who don't have what they need, right? The playing field is already just below the surface for these communities. And so the bottom line is, in these communities, we need access, we need resources. How do we get them? What do we need to do? Right? We need to come up with model initiatives where all players are involved, right? And committed to the cause. It takes activism. We've got to stop thinking of the mindset of, well, this doesn't affect me, so I don't care. We've got to let go of that mindset, because that is the mindset that continues to keep us behind. We've got to come together, even if we don't have a child in school, or even if our child isn't struggling in school, or even if our child is at a more affluent, community, like is in a more affluent community and goes to a more affluent school with a lot of resources. That still doesn't mean that these issues should not affect everyone, right? We've got to take it from a I mindset to a we mindset, right? Because even though I may not live in that community, I empathize with that community, right? And so that is how, like, change is going to come, right? So if something isn't working, why are we sticking with it? A lot of schools are sticking with curriculum and school programs and everything that they know they have the data to back it up that it doesn't work. But you don't want to go with anything new because you're used to the traditional way of doing things. So we've got to start thinking outside of the box. Why are we not meeting kids where they are? Why are we not understanding and learning about the best way that each child learns? You may have kinesthetic learners in your class that, if you're trying to give everything to them through, I don't know, visuals or audio, then that could be a contributing factor to the reason why they're not retaining any information. You may have, some learners who are visual learners, and you're giving them something to hear like through auditory means, and that may throw them off, like, because they're like, okay, I'm not paying attention. For me, myself, I'm a visual learner, so if you give me something to hear, I may have to hear it 1,000 times before I retain the information. So I think that knowing each individual, like, students learning style and learning preference, I think if we play upon those things, we can kind of do more good than harm, right? And I think that, we've got to be open and we've got to be flexible. They tell teachers all the time, be flexible, be flexible. No, I think the school and the district needs to be flexible as well, because we buy into these curriculum initiatives and things of that sort that have no that have no business in our schools. They just don't. So I think that us breaking away from tradition is really going to help, right? And I think that, with us meeting students where they are, I think that that builds that community inside of the classroom, right? It builds child motivation. We have a lot of kids in schools who don't want to be there. I don't think that kids are born to not want to learn anything. They're naturally curious. So how do we get kids who just they don't want to do anything anymore? They don't want to read, they don't want to do math, they don't want to do science, social studies, PE, they don't want to do anything. The motivation is not there anymore. So we've got to build that motivation back up, right? And I think that we should know that learning involves like a behavioral aspect, right? So in order to like have motivation, that is a behavioral shift. That's a mindset shift. So I think that when we look at learning as a behavior, we're able to better understand, well, why isn't this kid wanting to learn today? Well, maybe let's tap into the motivation. Let's tap into, well, what does the data say about this kid? Like, so I think that when we do these deep dives and deep analysis, I think that we're able to better understand how to serve like our kids. I think part of the problem is that they expect teachers to do all these deep analysis. However, they don't give you the time to do it. You want me to do deep analysis on 100 kids and I only got 8 hours of the day. So when do you want me to do this? On the weekend? Like, I'm barely pulling myself together on the weekend, So it's almost like they're putting everything on the teachers and not giving them any time to do it. Oh, we're going to give you the last 10 minutes of this PD to go through all of your data. 10 minutes is just going to get me to crack open the data. Like, I need time. Like, and so what happens is a lot of teachers just tuck that data in their book bag and just go on about their merry little way because you're not giving me enough time. And that's just what it is. I think that we have to reach out to outside groups, right? To build partnerships and to build these communities up. Like, it's going to take outside support. So if you feel like you're not getting, as a school leader, you feel like you're not getting any support from the district level, then by far, thank you, but no thank you. But let me go to my outside resources. Let me do what I got to do. That's the one thing that I did respect about the charter school that I worked for, is that they knew how to go out and build those partnerships, right? They did it by building a brand, right? And so with building that brand, they were able to build these outside partnerships to where they got so many just different like resources and money. Now, what they did with the money, that's another story. Like, so you got to make sure that when you're going to build these outside partnerships, that you're going to like truly use the money for, what, is going to be best for kids, right? Because again, jackets, suits, ties, and fun things, those are all good. However, if we don't know how to read, that's even worse. So I think that we have to make an organizational change, right? And how we do that is by including the public. We have to engage with affected communities. That's what I just talked about earlier. We have to construct user knowledge. So the more we know, the more we're able to attack the problem, right? We have to adopt a critical stance. It's not like we got to get out of the traditional mindset. We got to get out of it. And then we also have to create new understanding. So with getting out of a old traditional way, we create new understandings, right? And then we build power to alter politics. Because let's be honest, everything that I said here, it has a political stance to it, right? Politics is at the center of a lot of the disparities that communities of color face in the education sector. And that's just the real. So I think that when we do all of these things and we better understand the issues, then I think that we're able to reach down and say, hey, brother, hey, sister, like, this is what I need. Seeking that outside help. It's not okay to just, have these ambitions to be school leaders and district leaders, and then we're not going to do anything with it because you're just wasting everybody's time. Same thing with teachers. Don't have an ambition to teach kids and inspire kids and then don't do anything with it. I mean, you might as well just stop. Like, it's no point. So I think that, just wrapping, this conversation up, I think that, school reform, it has to look a bit different. We've got to get out of the traditional mindset and we've got to start thinking critically. And so, because this is the last part of this series, I think that I am now ready to talk about why I said no to the traditional idea of teaching and why I walked away and why I quit. But I think that is going to be a series, and get ready for my tell all. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, I think that it's time for us to actually start telling our stories, because I think a lot of times when we leave and we just say whatever, or we leave and we go into different like sectors of education and we just say, oh, all of that is behind me. Nope, we've got to start talking about it. And so that's what you should look forward to coming up on the next episode next week of the Education Collective podcast. And right now, I'm out.